Have you seen the new Ancient Apocalypse documentary? I saw Matt Walsh watched it and he recommended it for various reasons. So I checked it out and I watched it. And Ancient Apocalypse is a documentary series hosted by a man named Graham Hancock. And I'd seen Graham Hancock on the Joe Rogan podcast. And I know that people call him a pseudoscientist and a pseudo archaeologist. And what he has proposed and what he proposes in the series Ancient Apocalypse is that what we know about ancient man and the origin of human civilization is incorrect. And that there were ancient humans before the end of the Ice Age, before the end of the Pleistocene era, that were advanced. They knew about astronomy, and they were able to do major archaeological miracles, megalithic structures. And then something happened. Graham Hancock says that it was the melting of all of this ice that raised water levels and created what he calls the ancient apocalypse or the cataclysm. Now, the establishment and the universities and the media do not like what Graham is saying. Many have said that it pushes the received consensus of science too far, and it's just a hack. It's just pseudoscience, pseudo archaeology. And Matt Walsh said, it's kind of nice to have some outside perspective on these things, but I want to do a review of it today. And I want to suggest that what Graham Hancock is doing, what he's uncovering, is the biblical narrative, the story of Genesis. Now, Graham Hancock would be totally opposed to me saying this or suggesting it. If you've listened to Graham Hancock on Joe Rogan, he is very much a New Ager. He believes that Christianity is an enemy to civilization. He believes that the Christians were colonizers, they were to be resisted, and that the ancient shamans have the true wisdom and the true philosophy. But in fact, I think Graham Hancock is resisting his own theory and his own research, if it's correct, in that he is butting up against what Christians have believed for 2,000 years, and that is that ancient humans like Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel and Enoch and Noah weren't a bunch of idiotic cavemen grunting, living in caves without fire, without wheels. No. Adam, the first man, and his descendants were from the very beginning civilized. Look at Cain and Abel. They already are doing agriculture. They already have hunting and gathering. They've already domesticated animals, apparently sheep, goats, cattle. It's all been done in the first generation of the human species. Also in the book of Genesis, we read about how God gave the sun, the moon, the stars for the telling of time and the breaking down of seasons. And one of the arguments that Graham Hancock has in Ancient Apocalypse, he said, you can go all over these sites, and he travels all over the documentary series to North America, South America, Egypt, Europe, everywhere. And he shows that these ancient peoples, likely going back way further than the Egyptians or the Babylonians, they were already calculating and recording key events like the summer solstice, the winter solstice, the fall equinox, the spring equinox. And they were setting up structures. So these ancient people were very sophisticated. Graham Hancock says that. They weren't just stupid cavemen. And then a major global cataclysm happened all over the earth related to water and flooding. Again, what does this remind you of? Genesis chapter 6. Right? So we have all these ancient people who were civilized, who had domesticated animals, who were able to do architecture. And then a water cataclysm happened. Now, Graham Hancock says, look, every ancient culture, North America, South America, Asia, Africa, Australia, Europe, all over, every single one of them document a flood moment in their ancient past. That there was some kind of advanced civilization, God or the gods was unhappy with how that advanced civilization was behaving. There was a flood event, an ancient apocalypse, a cataclysmic restart, and then humanity started again and had to relearn, recultivate. And then after that event, after thousands of years, which is exactly what Graham Hancock says, then civilization begins to rise. And we see this in the book of Genesis again. The book of Genesis is talking about how a certain family, the family of Abraham, was co-opted into slavery into Egypt. And we know that from 4 to 6,000 BC, the Egyptian culture, the Babylonian cultures, they began to develop cities. We see that in the book of Genesis, the first cities, the first kings, the first national wars. And with agriculture becomes monuments, cities, and a slave class. That happens all at the same time. Everybody's in agreement with that. Again, that's the book of Genesis. So I think Graham Hancock is bumping into the reality of what Christians have held for all these years. Ancient man was not an ignorant caveman. Adam, Eve had infused knowledge from God. They were able to pass down knowledge to their children. Ancient people were sophisticated. Perhaps at another time, I will do a video on in Genesis 6 where it says the sons of God went into the daughters of men. And it talks about the Nephilim or the giants in some translations. I'll do another video on that. So make sure you like the video, this one. Make sure you subscribe, hit the subscribe button and the bell to be notified. I'll do that in a future video and talk about the Nephilim and the giants. But we know that there was an ancient advanced culture. The people lived long. Check out this graph on the screen. You can see up until the ancient apocalypse of Noah's flood, people were living into the 900s. See that line right across the top there? And then once the flood happens, the apocalypse happens, there is a decrease in age, and you see it sloping down to the age 120 or 100, which is basically what we still have today. So there's this ancient civilization. Something happens in the atmosphere. Something happens to planet Earth where moths are no longer huge, plants are no longer huge, insects, lizards are no longer huge. They become smaller. We live for a shorter amount of time. We lose what we had before. We become ignorant, and then it takes a few thousand years for us to get back on our feet and civilization to rise up again with its monuments, its agriculture, and unfortunately, its slave class. And that's the whole story of Genesis in the first 12 chapters. Graham Hancock, although he is very anti-Christian and against the worldview of the Bible, he does seem to be revealing that there was an ancient apocalypse and that it was a flood event. Challenge for you. Go back and read Genesis, chapters 1 through 12. That's the origin story of humanity. And if you want, go check out Ancient Apocalypse. I think it's over on Netflix, 8 episodes. Leave a comment below if you've seen it already. Like this video and please subscribe so you can get the future video, especially the one I'll do on the Nephilim and whether or not angels copulated, had sex with humans and created these giants, these Nephilim. It's in the book of 1st Enoch and maybe references in 2nd Peter and Jude. I'll cover that in the future. So make sure you subscribe. And thanks for watching. Until next time, remember our Lord Jesus Christ is you're the light of the world and the salt of the earth. So go out there and be salty. God bless and Godspeed.